Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. I am the Divine One and I'm bringing you yet another assortment. Hello, darlings, and welcome back to the channel. Listen, gather round for this gospel. According to Donald, in the beginning, he banned refugees. Then lo and behold, he made an exception for white South Africans. They're being known as Afrikaners. Yes, you heard that right. The same Trump administration has slammed the door on nearly all refugees fleeing war and persecution has rolled out the red carpet for a select few of quote-unquote persecuted souls, the white Afrikaners, farmers of South Africa. Like really, I'm going to need all those people who have been saying that Donald Trump is not racist, all those Cubanos and Cubanas that were saucing in the middle of the street to I will vote for Donald Trump. I need all of them to the front of the class, please. You have a presentation, okay? And we're going to need to hear from you. So let me get this straight, okay? Let's get right to the point. They are now importing poor white trash into the country. At the same time, they are kidnapping Latin, Cuban, Venezuelans, Brazilians, etc. right off the street. Then it's being reported that the South Afrikaners have not been fully vetted, and the ones selected, some of them attended pro-apartheid rallies, and one of the states they are placing them in is Alabama. For those of you who are confused about that, just think throwing a hat up in the air, Negroes swimming across lakes, and a whole lot of furniture moving on a pier. Okay, what could go? But if I see folding chairs selling out again, then all that means is that another black man done threw another hat into the air. All I know is that I hope these Afrikaners know that blacks stateside here are not the same as the blacks in South Africa. Hopefully, these Trump people are at least giving them some type of orientation, explaining that calling a black person colored in the United States may result in serious bodily injury. Hopefully, they are educating them that we in fact do know what Akata and Kefers are, and if you call us that, you will blink and St. Peter will be at the pearly gates to explain to you where you up at. But I digress. I have some TikToks. Y'all know how we roll over here. We got some TikToks, and we shall have commentary at the end. Let's go.
Losses to the neck, but now I'm trophied up. I'm saying like bing, bop, boom, 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 bop, bam.
To all of the South African Afrikaans refugees that are coming to America soon, I just want to let you know, as someone whose wife is Afrikaans, who's been to South Africa multiple times, you're gonna have a bad time. There's no white genocide happening in South Africa. You have crime that's happening as a result of racism-fueled generational economic inequality, the same thing that's happening in America. We're just a couple decades ahead of you on the unchecked capitalism timeline. But I have good news for you. You don't have to worry about the cheap exploited labor rising up against you anymore, because now that you're in America, you'll get to be the cheap exploited labor. If you were middle class or upper middle class in South Africa and you come to America, you're poor now. Like, really poor. You're not gonna have maids and gardeners and personal servants that you can pay $15 a day for. Now you get to be the cheap labor. But by all means, please come to America and experience the American capitalism that Elon Musk's been raving about to you. You'll probably love it. You know, what do I know? There's probably very little chance that you'll end up going back to South Africa in a year or two after realizing how overpriced and fucked up America is. I wouldn't even worry about that as a possibility. And if you think I'm being mean to these people because I think they're a bunch of racist, bigoted colonizers who wish they could go back to apartheid South Africa, it's just because I do think that. But to them, I say, welcome to the American dream. Please let me know when you've woken up from it.
White people with less than $100,000 and that own a red hat. Make sense of this for me. America first, but make sense of this for me. The front half of a centaur that's running this country, there's a good joke about Elon being in the back half with a puppet, is currently expediting refugees from South Africa to America with short and long-term housing while you're still poor. Before they helped you, like, anybody with less than 100 grand is poor. You're still poor. I know there's different levels. You're still in the group that is not their friend circle. Probably never will be. Likely will never be. Does it hurt or bother you that this group that's putting America first is now putting South Africans first, who, by the way, got there from where? Not America. They're actually Dutch, French, and German colonists. Make this one make sense to me. I feel like you can't just say, like, they're refugees, they need our help, because if that was the case, is it different because they're white? Just say that then. Just say that. What's that song by YG and Nipsey Hussle again?
So the Trump administration has welcomed 59 Afrikaners, as they're calling them, white South Africans who are were welcomed here as part of a refugee settlement program. Meanwhile, they are cutting TPS, programs for temporary protected status for people who are from, for example, Afghanistan and other regions who are desperately in need of these programs, who came here from war-torn regions. And I really don't know what to say to this, except that this is just blatant segregation. I mean, that's what they're doing. Why are they selecting one group of people, seemingly based on their ethnicity, while telling black and brown people not to come here?
So this is something that has a lot of people upset. The fact that Donald Trump is allowing South Africans, white South Africans, to come to the U.S. as refugees, and everybody is just up in arms. They are upset. But you know what? Here's the thing that I think a lot of people don't realize is that only 54 white Africans are coming into the United States. 54. And everybody just, we let millions and millions and millions and millions of people and nobody cares. But 54 white people, y'all see what he's doing, right? Y'all see what Donald Trump is doing? He is trying to, make this country white again. Please, if you have any understanding of what's going on in South Africa, this has been going on before Donald Trump was even president, that white people were being persecuted and their lives were being taken away, as well as their property, simply for being white. This has been going on before Donald Trump was president. And as a matter of fact, I met a college student here at University of Texas, San Antonio, who was from South Africa, who came to the United States to study. And, everything that was going on over there, she was like, yeah, it's terrible. And that's why I came over here, because they are being persecuted literally for being white. And now 54 people, 54 are coming on a plane to the United States, and everybody is calling this an invasion. Don't you see what Donald Trump is doing? He's trying to make America white again.
This video is for the white Afrikaners who are coming to the United States. I think you've already landed here. And I know that some of the folks who met you at the airport told you, welcome, we're so glad you're here. Most of us aren't glad you're here, okay? We don't want you here. We never wanted you here. And furthermore, I noticed they're gonna settle you in Idaho, Ohio, and North Carolina. I will tell you they're not our finest states, so they're a good fit for you. I understand that many of you are farmers, and I've seen a lot of people say, oh, that's great, we need more farmers. Sorry to say we don't. We actually need farm workers because we've deported most of them. So if you can, put your picking hat on and think about, picking produce, that's largely probably what you're going to be doing here, because I hear you don't have a lot of skills. I would also say that you're not going to have to hold just one job, but probably 2 or 3 to make up for your quality of life that you had back in South Africa. There'll be no servants working for $2 a day. There's none of that here. So you're the servant who's working for $2 a day. So enjoy that. You're gonna have to pay for your health care, and ordinarily, because you're a refugee who's being discriminated against, you would go on Medicaid. But guess what? The Republicans just cut Medicaid. So I don't think you're going to have that option for healthcare. So maybe you'll do without. I don't know. And honestly, I don't care. I did notice that the Episcopalian Church had a program with the government where they would, they would resettle and help, refugees resettle. They find you all to be so onerous, they terminated the partnership with the government. And they said, yeah, we won't be resettling those folks. Other things that you need to know about. While we are 58% white here in the United States, that's not going to last much longer. Within the next couple of years, we're going to be the minority, which will be fun for you because that's what you're used to. Interestingly enough, we have a ton of Latinos. We're the second largest Spanish-speaking country in the world. So for you, if you could stop speaking that dirty, guttural, whatever it is, German, French, Dutch thing that you speak, that Afrikaans, nobody wants to hear that shit. So you can speak English or you can speak Spanish, which is really the second language here. In terms of other things that you need to know about, the black people in this country, they don't get fucked with, okay? I know that there's a long legacy of colonialism and all kinds of stuff happening in your country, but our black folks have sort of been through the fire, if you will, and they're not gonna be fucked with. So you're the minority here. Enjoy. I really hope you like your time here. I'm gonna bet my ass that you're gonna be booking it back to SA probably within the next 12 months. Have a great day.
Okay. So if you think about the history of South Africa, it being under an apartheid system, where I think it is 80% of the population that are black Africans only own 4% of the land. That is because they were put in shanty towns and moved into areas where they had no rights. And so 30 plus years ago, they went through a the apartheid system ended, and they reformed their constitution under the great leader of Nelson Mandela, and that allowed for a racial reconciliation, one that this country has yet to do, but South Africa did it, and they reformed their constitution, and part of that is that the people who are native to that land deserve their rightful land back. That is not what the Afrikaners actually want to have happen, which are the white Africans, and so who are not originally from Africa, who colonized South Africa also. And so that is what they are saying is discrimination. Now, if the Constitution in South Africa is discriminatory, they have their checks and balances in that land, just like we do. And that is for them to, so if the Afrikaners don't actually like the land, they can leave that country.
They are. They're leaving to come here.
No. They can
These refugees are coming here.
They can actually leave and go to where their native land is, which is probably Germany.
Are you against them coming here?
Holland, probably.
Holland.
Are you
yes.
against them coming here?
I'm against the hypocrisy of this administration.
No, that's not the question. The question is, are you against them coming here?
If there was actually a genocide happening, like there is in other places in Sudan, in the Congo, I'm not opposed for Congolese and for the Sudanese to come to Africa, just like I'm not opposed to Venezuelans and South Americans coming to America if they are fleeing and looking for asylum. What I am
But just these 50 people you're against.
I am against, it's not about being against them. What I am against is that they are being given special treatment when there is not a genocide happening in South Africa, and they just don't like the law of the land.
Well,
so you know what they tell people?
But there's a very high crime rate in South Africa. They have a crime problem. I suspect that part of what's going on here is that there is a very high-profile white South African named Elon Musk, who is very close to President Trump and is probably making this a very high-profile issue and talking to Trump about it. You know, Elon Musk has tweeted about it. He's, I think, called the president of South Africa about it. He's been talking about this for a long time. Look, here's the problem. There's Afghanis who helped us.
Picture it. Weary Afrikaner families stepping onto American soil in Alabama and Idaho, welcomed as heroes escaping some great injustice. Meanwhile, refugees of other backgrounds are nowhere to be seen at our airports because Trump had effectively shut down the refugee program for everyone else. This was a whites-only rescue mission. Now, how did these particular folks win the Trump refugee lottery? Did they endure rigorous years of long vetting like everyone else? No. In fact, Trump bent the rules for them. Normally, refugees must flee their home country and get vetted by the UN in a neutral country, a process that can take years. But for these Afrikaners, the administration literally sent U.S. officials to South Africa to do fast-track refugee interviews on the spot. The usual vetting safeguards waived, international protocols ignored, the UN, HCR, and IOM, the UN refugee agencies, were sidelined entirely. It's as if the bureaucratic Red Sea parted just for Donald Trump's chosen people. It turns out that if you're white, Christian, and conservative enough, U.S. refugee policy can become remarkably efficient. Paperwork that would take other refugees decades in a camp was approved in mere months for the Afrikaners. A miracle in white, indeed. Truly heartwarming, isn't it? Trump finally found refugees he can love. Conveniently, they look like his base and speak Afrikaans, which sounds a lot like Dutch or maybe German. Either way, it's not Spanish or Arabic, thank heavens. The hypocrisy is already thicker than biltong, that's South African beef jerky, by the way. But wait, it gets richer. To understand the full absurdity, we need to examine why Trump claimed these folks needed saving in the first place. Cue the conspiracy music. That music, darling, go ahead and cue it. Okay, thank you. To sell this great white rescue, the Trump team needed a great big story, a big lie, and they had one. White genocide in South Africa. In Trump's telling and in countless far-right echo chambers, white Afrikaner farmers are facing brutal persecution, even extermination, by the black-led South African government. This man ain't breathing unless he's lying, correct? This man will tell a lie faster than a Walmart transaction, correct? Anyway, in Trump's own voice, they are confiscating their land and farms, and much worse than that. It's a disaster, folks, really terrible. This was Trump on his social media platform practically envisioning an ethnic cleansing of white farmers. I mean, what else would you expect from a man that had to orchestrate two assassination attempts that just poof, just no one talks about anymore? Isn't that amazing? Anywho, these claims don't come from thin air.
With his claim, it actually did.
They've been floating around in extremist circles for years. Cue the incels. The narrative goes like this. Post-apartheid South Africa has it in for white farmers. There's rampant murder and land theft, a white genocide unfolding that global media ignore. It's a favorable talking point on white nationalist blogs and was even referenced by the Christchurch mosque shooter in 2019 to give you an idea of its pedigree. In 2018, this myth hit the mainstream when Tucker Carlson ran a segment on Fox News about South Africa's white farmers, catching Trump's eye. He tweeted about it, and ever since, the idea became MAGA gospel. Now, in 2025, Trump is acting as if this conspiracy theory is fact. But here's the truth. There is no white genocide. Let me say it again for the slow people. There is no white genocide. Again, for all of those South Afrikaners that were sitting over here sending me messages on my shorts, there is no white genocide. Okay, get out the liquor cabinet. South Africa certainly has violent crime, but it does not target white people for being white. According to South African police data, out of over 26,000 murders nationwide last year, only 44 were farm related, and not all of those victims were white farmers. The vast majority of homicide victims in South Africa are black, which stands to reason in a country where black South Africans are the overwhelming majority. As a South African official plainly put it, there is no evidence whatsoever that crime deliberately targets a particular race in this country. And about those land seizures Trump ranted about, South Africa has debated land reform due to apartheid's legacy of land disposition. But by 2025, no land had actually been confiscated without compensation. Even the controversial land expropriation policy hadn't resulted in any white farmers losing their farm at the time. Trump's claim was based on misinformation and exaggerated anecdote, not on reality. As South Africa's government angrily pointed out, they called his allegations inaccurate and misinformation. Sidebar: maybe South African government officials just should call it what it is: racism. It is welfare for white Afrikaners. It is reparations for white Afrikaners. Just like they gave reparations to white Israeli Jews after World War II. It's okay to call a thing a thing. It's racist. It's racist policy. It's coming from a racist U.S. president, and we're no longer going to pretend as if this man is not racist. Moving right along. The only thing that's really missing at this point is a Heil Hitler. Now enter Elon Musk. I'm surprised more people aren't talking about the air quote, white farmers issue. It's very real, guys. You know what's real, Elon? What's real is that ever since you started supporting this Trump administration, the Tesla stock has been halved. It's been cut in half. What's real is that you have stakeholders and shareholders that are actively searching for your replacement. Okay,
Your replacement is going to be very, very real, guy.
and see, I knew Elon Musk was never to be trusted. You see, you can't be a billionaire and continue to have teeth with caked on tartar teeth that looks like you've chewed on cinder blocks all day or something. I don't know. All I know is that it's un-American and it needs to apply for citizenship. Just your tea. Anywho, Elon Musk, South Africa's richest export, the techno king himself, has lent credence to this narrative. Musk, who was born in Pretoria, has repeatedly hinted on Twitter, formerly X or whatever, that white South African farmers are victims. He's echoed the white discrimination claims online, giving millions of his followers the false impression that a genocide is underway. When someone with Musk influence fans to flames, the myth gains power. It even emboldens groups like AfriForum and Afrikaner lobby group that have spent years lobbying internationally about farm murders. Fun fact, AfriForum's reps traveled to the US in 2018 to appear on conservative media and met officials spreading these tales of persecution. So, we have a perfect storm of disinformation. As soon as you mention anything with Tucker Carlson or Fox News, we already know it's an echo chamber. A viral conspiracy theory amplified by alt-right media, a South African lobby, and a tech billionaire gets blessed by Donald Trump. And now that myth has literally been written into US policy. The executive order Trump signed in February 2025 explicitly talks about disproportionate violence against Afrikaner farmers and prioritizes them as refugees. Imagine basing immigration policy on internet rumors and racist tropes. Oh wait, we don't have to imagine, do we? It just happened, and it's been happening. Let's recap. The contrast: real refugees, say a Syrian family bombed out of their home, or a Congolese mother who survived a militia attack, didn't stand a chance of getting into Trump's America. But a white South Afrikaner farmer who feels unfairly taxed or had a run-in with local criminals, step right on up, sir. Your U.S. refugee visa is ready. It sounds like satire, but it's coldly reality in 2025. The persecution narrative is largely fiction, but it was the necessary fiction to justify Trump's grand exception, and it set the stage for an astounding double standard in how refugees are treated, one that hasn't gone unnoticed. Stay tuned. Let's talk about who wasn't invited to Trump's refugee revival. Spoiler, basically everyone else. While those Afrikaner families were being whisked to America, the administration was still slamming the door on other refugees around the world, including people in far more dire straits. Remember, Trump had suspended the U.S. refugee program for most groups, citing security and cost excuses. That meant thousands of refugees who had already been vetted and cleared from Afghanistan, the Congo, Syria, Myanmar, you name it, were left in limbo. Many had risked their lives alongside U.S. forces or survived genocides of their own, yet none of them got a special airlift or expedited process. Where was the urgent charter flight for the Afghan interpreters who dodged Taliban bullets for American soldiers? Those folks got years of bureaucratic runaround, if anything. Where was the fast track for Congolese families running from a decades-long war that's killed millions? They're one of the largest refugee population, but under Trump, their admission plummeted. And Palestinian refugees, please. Oh, wait a minute. Where's Maya? Let's check on. Anybody check Maya Ioni's page? Is she talking about this? Probably not. She's too busy on dating shows getting rejected. But when Gaza was in flames and families were displaced, Trump's response was to side 100% with Israel. The notion of offering Palestinians refuge in the U.S. was never even on the table. Did Maya know about that prior to the election? But I guess I would have to be able to say Kamala Harris would never. Anyway, the contrast is black and white, literally. If you were a refugee with black or brown skin or from a majority Muslim country, the message was not welcome. But white South Africans who claimed, often vaguely, that they felt unsafe or unfairly treated, right this way, sir, your table is ready. Then you have a very balding white Jewish man by the name of Stephen Miller, who happens to be a white nationalist. Memo to Stephen Miller, you're Jewish, white nationalists, they come for you too, okay? But that's neither here nor there. But what did Stephen Miller say? We only want the right kind of refugees. The imaginary quote pretty much sums it up. Stephen Miller, Trump's anti-immigration Savangali, likely loved this plan. After years of orchestrating Muslim bans and asylum crackdowns, here was a chance to rebrand the refugee program in white nationalist terms. The administration didn't even hide it. The eligibility criteria for this Afrikaner program were ideological and racial. It explicitly prioritized Afrikaners, white conservative Christian South Africans of Dutch French descent, not English-speaking white South Africans, not Indian or black South Africans who face violence. Only Afrikaners tied to a particular ethnic and political identity, one that just so happens to align with Trumpism. They basically created an affirmative action program for white right-wing refugees. The irony is not missed upon me. And to make it happen, they've tossed out the usual rule book. Interesting. Normally, refugee resettlement involves the UN and careful review of who's most vulnerable. But for Trump's chosen refugees, U.S. officials flew directly to Pretoria to handpick candidates. The UN High Commissioner for Refugees was like, this isn't how it's done. And even the UN's migration agency, the IOM, refused to participate in this charade. But Trump's team didn't care. They set up a parallel process just for these Afrikaners. You can imagine this scene: two DHS officers in a room in Pretoria interviewing an Afrikaner family. So you say you're persecuted because black folks got government jobs and you didn't. Traumatic. Stamp of approve. Next window. A Congolese refugee who survived a rebel massacre. Stamp denied. Window closed. Sorry, come back never. The injustice writes itself. The double standard here is glaring and grotesque. It sends a message loud and clear: refugees of color need not apply. Only those who fit a certain narrative, white Christian victims of a black government, get special treatment. This flies in the face of decades of refugee policy that, at least on paper, tried to be colorblind and based on need. And it wasn't just theoretical. Real people lost their chance at safety because of this. Every slot taken by an Afrikaner, fast-tracked for political reasons, is a slot denied to, say, a Congolese child waiting in a camp or an Iraqi translator hiding from death squads. Trump capped refugee numbers absurdly low, so giving 100 of those precious spots to Afrikaners means 100 other desperate refugees were effectively left behind. It's the ultimate what if. What if these white South Africans had been black or Muslim? Would Trump have given a damn? We all know the answer. He barely cared about Puerto Ricans after a hurricane. You think he'd care about black Africans fleeing militias? This was never about genuine concern for the persecuted. It was about opposite ideology. And to prove it, just look at how people reacted both in South Africa and back home in the state. Not everyone was saying amen to Trump's Afrikaner airlift. In fact, a lot of folks were furious, and a lot of others just laughed at its absurdity. Let's start in South Africa, where this reaction ranged from anger to mockery. The South African government was livid. Imagine being a country and the US president basically declares to the world that you're oppressing your white minority so badly that he has to rescue them. Talk about an insult. President Cyril Ramaphosa administration blasted Trump's plan as based on misinformation and distortion. They stressed that South Africa protects all citizens under one of the world's most progressive constitutions. Post-apartheid South Africa outlaws racial discrimination, period. Government spokespeople reiterated that while crime is an issue, there is no campaign of racial terror as Trump suggested. One official even said Trump's claims were madness and warned this could stir up racial tensions in their country, which they've been working hard to heal. South Africa's ruling party, the ANC, basically said Trump is chasing phantoms and undermining their sovereignty. And honestly, they have a point. It's not great when a foreign leader acts like your country is Rwanda 1994 when it's not. Some South African diplomats weren't so diplomatic in private. One allegedly called Trump a racist, homophobic narcissist. No sugarcoating there. But I guess the main problem I have with that is stop saying those types of things in private. Meanwhile, ordinary South Africans, including many white South Africans, responded with eye rolls and satire. On Twitter, which South Africans use enthusiastically, white locals started mock applying for U.S. refugee status as a joke. They'd post things like, "Help, I need asylum in America. The line at Starbucks is way too long today. #persecuted. Memes went viral of endangered white South Africans in absurd scenarios, hiding from imaginary marauding black mobs on golf courses and wine estates. The humor basically said, "This is ridiculous. We're fine, thanks." One viral joke showed a white guy at a barbecue, looking terrified because they ran out of craft beer, proof that Afrikaners are suffering. Even Afroforum, the Afrikaner lobby that helped spark this, had to tone it down. Their CEO, Kali Creel, publicly said thanks but no thanks to refugee offers, insisting the future of Afrikaners is in South Africa and they'd rather stay and fight for their rights at home. It was a bit awkward for Afriforum. They want international sympathy, but actually encouraging white South Africans to leave en masse would make them look like they've given up on South Africa. So they half-heartedly welcomed Trump's attention, but also said essentially, we're not actually packing our bags just yet. The whole episode became a punchline in South Africa. But in America, for many, it was no laughing matter. Human rights groups and advocates were incensed. The refugee resettlement community, folks at nonprofits who had spent 4 years watching Trump dismantle the refugee program, saw this as a cruel joke, a white supremacist photo op. One advocate seethed, accusing Trump of using human beings, hand-picked white ones, as props. The ACLU and others pointed out the rank hypocrisy. Trump had effectively banned refugees fleeing actual persecution, only to turn around and welcome people who, by any objective measure, were among the safest and most privileged refugees on the planet. Civil rights organizations like the NAACP drew a straight line. This policy equals white nationalism in action. Sidebar: the NAACP, the National Advancement of whatever they are nowadays, because they certainly don't do anything for black people. This is what happens when your organization's been co-opted. Moving right along. They reminded everyone of Trump's greatest hits, from the Muslim ban to slashing diversity visas, and said that Afrikaner scheme is more of the same racist agenda. It would have been nice if they would have talked about that, I don't know, during the election. But anywho, the framing was, if we let this slide, what does it say about America? What does it say about America? It exposes that this is America. It's a racist country. Even some moderate politicians voiced concern. A few Republican lawmakers, quietly behind closed doors, of course, because they are cowards, admitted this looked really bad. That it was hard to defend on principle. Democrats, of course, lambasted the administration for blatant racism dressed up as refugee policy. The Congressional Black Caucus members held it up as proof that Trump's administration immigration stance was never about the rule of law, only about racial bias. Internationally, U.S. allies and global bodies responded with measured criticism. The United Nations Refugee Agency put out a carefully worded statement emphasizing that it played no part in this Afrikaner resettlement scheme, and subtly reminded all countries, read the U.S., that refugee status should be determined by actual need and danger, not politics or race. Diplomats from various African and developing nations in the UN were less subtle and private, calling it an affront to the spirit of humanitarianism. Even countries like Canada and some in Europe, while not openly confronting Washington, made side comments like, "We prefer to resettle those most in need," implying unlike some people. One could practically hear the collective facepalm from the international community. America first, indeed, as in the first time America has explicitly made refugee admissions a racial preference. It's a stain on the U.S. record, and our friends abroad took note. I guess they didn't take any notes during the any Haitian crises when they were being discriminated, but that's neither here nor there. But if you ask Trump's hardcore base, they were thrilled. On far-right message boards, it was a celebration time. Daddy Trump sticking it to the libs. Sidebar. It's mind-boggling that they have such animosity toward libs and liberals, but I've been seeing thousands of videos of them complaining about losing Section 8, losing welfare, getting their food stamps cut, their farm subsidies halved, or not seeing a check and going into bankruptcy. But owning the libs right now, I guess that would be true. If I libs, they mean that they're going bankrupt. So you're owning bankruptcy. That's all you're doing. Moving right along. They love that he found a way to say, see, I'm not anti-refugee, I just only like the right refugees. Fox News ran celebratory segments. Trump defends oppressed white farmers. You can imagine a Tucker Carlson monologues. Indeed, he boasted about this story repeatedly as vindication. Some extremists even mused that bringing in Afrikaners, who tend to be conservative and racist, as exhibited by their need to march for apartheid. Yeah, they were recently marching for apartheid. The people that he went down to Elon Musk's hometown were recently marching for apartheid. So obviously the ability of the refugee to be racist is a feature or something that was investigated, and they said sounds like a perfect fit to be a Christian conservative Republican. Come on. And now the justification for not accepting refugees from mainly Muslim countries is the potential linkage to Al-Qaeda or ISIS type groups. But as long as you can fit in with a white nationalist organization, you're all white. Could help tilt some purple states more red. A cynical political calculation under a humanitarian guise. And that right there is the dangerous undercurrent. White nationalists seeing this as a huge win, which brings us to the bigger picture. Let's pull back the curtain on how this policy came to be. It didn't spout from nowhere. It was cultivated by a network of enablers who thrive on the white victimhood, white grievance narrative. Meet our cast of characters, the tech billionaires, the ideologues, and the lobbyists. First up, Elon Musk. We've mentioned him before, but his role is worth underscoring. Musk is not a politician, but in the social media age, one tweet from him can set the agenda. By openly validating the idea that white South Africans are endangered, Musk gave Trump political cover. After all, if a famous and South African-born billionaire keeps bringing this up, it must be a real issue, right? I noticed he wasn't bringing up those Tesla cars just spontaneously combusting, but you know, priorities. After all, Musk essentially acted as a bridge between fringe Afrikaner activists and MAGA policymakers, amplifying each other's message. It's a weird nexus of Silicon Valley and apartheid nostalgia. Musk might frame it as a concern for his people, but let's be real, it turbocharged the alt-right narrative. And let's not forget the lobbyists and influencers who set the stage. We talked about Afro Forum, the Afrikaner rights group. They spent years pumping out stories of farm murders, even if it meant twisting facts. Their representatives found sympathetic ears among American conservatives. Back in 2018, AfriForum's leaders met with people like John Bolton and posted selfies with Fox News hosts. They planted seeds that eventually bore fruit in 2025. Alongside them were far-right U.S. figures, think tank types, maybe a few congressmen. Remember Congressman Steve King of Iowa? He was clamoring about white South African farmers back in the day. Those folks pressured and proposed ideas like special visas for Afrikaners. They got nowhere under Obama, but under Trump, they had allies in high place. So by the time Trump was looking for a second term policy win that would thrill his base, the pump was prime. Musk had steered public interest, AfroForum had provided the anecdote, and Miller had the ideological framework ready. All it took was the political will of Trump, which, given his affinity for theatrics and grievance politics, was a low hurdle to clear. He signed the order, and voila, the fringe idea became federal policy. It's a little tragicomic, an American president acting on the same talking points you'd find in the depths of 4chan or a YouTube comment section, but that's the era we live in. The Afrikaner refugee saga shows just how much sway the white nationalist echo chamber has gained, and if you think they'll stop at this, think again. This whole episode might seem like a weird one-off, a small number of people, a peculiar footnote in history, but it's far more than that. It's a harbinger, a warning of what U.S. policy could become if the trajectory continues. When a government starts picking and choosing refugees based on race and ideology, it's edging toward a very dark place. Today it's a few dozen Afrikaners. Tomorrow it could be an official doctrine. In fact, Trump's camp has left clues. Their policy blueprint, Hello Project 2025. Oh, I thought he did say that he didn't believe in it. No, he didn't. He said he didn't know anything about it. Something, whatever the case may be, it was all a lie. Opening talks about ending asylum as we know it and replacing it with something much more restrictive. They'd favor refugees from culturally compatible groups, which is code for Christian, non-Muslim, and yes, lighter skin. Well, by lighter skin you mean white, then white. If Trump or a like-minded successor gets another term, we could see the legal enshrinement of this two-tier system. Refugees who are deemed our kind of people zoom to the front while the rest face a closed gate. History has shown us where that kind of thinking leads. We start by only letting in, say, white South Africans, next perhaps only Christian Europeans fleeing persecution, quote-unquote, real or imagined, get special status. Meanwhile, those fleeing actual genocide could be shut out because they're the wrong religion or ethnicity. The international ripple effect is also worrying. When the US does something, others follow. European far-right leaders are surely taking note. Maybe a future France or Italy decides to copy Trump. We'll take refugees, but only white Christians from South Africa. In fact, we've already saw a mild version when many Europeans warmly welcome Ukrainian refugees who are mostly white Christians but were quite hostile to Syrians and Afghans before. Trump's move effectively legitimizes that bias. It's like giving a thumbs up to the idea that some refugees are more equal than others. For South Africa itself, Trump's meddling could stir trouble. It validates the fringe voices within South Africa that claim white genocide, emboldening white separatists, and maybe provoking angry responses from black South Africans who feel their country's image is under attack. It's the last thing a still healing society needs. South Africa's leaders worry that this feeds extremist narratives on both sides. White far-right groups feel vindicated, and black populists could say, see, the whites are running to America, maybe we should indeed rethink their land ownership. It's playing with fire in the country that emerged from apartheid not so long ago. Furthermore, in South Africa, you do have white separatists who are trying to formulate their own country by taking a portion of the South African land and have it designated as a brand new South African country where only whites are allowed and where only whites have power, which is an oddity that they're demanding land land and privileges in a country that they're not native to, maybe they should board some flights back to France or back to wherever they speak Dutch, and then they can make their proclamations and demands there. But that's not our business here in America. Here in the United States, the Afrikaners refugee stunt has poured fuel on our own culture war. It sends a clear signal to white supremacists and alt-right groups here: your worldview has a place in our policy. They are already trumpeting, pardon the pun, this as proof that white Americans can be victims and deserve protection. The Proud Boys, the militias, the online trolls, they see this and cheer. It reinforces their paranoid narrative of white replacement and reverse racism. And that narrative doesn't stay confined to refugee policy. It seeps into everything: voting rights, claims of anti-white discrimination in elections, education bans on teaching about racism to protect white students, law enforcement painting white extremists as victims of FBI witch hunt. When the government validates even a shred of white genocide mythology, it empowers those who thrive on that mythology. This is why we can't just shrug and say, it's only a few dozen people. Principle at stake is huge. If we believe in equality and impartial justice, we must oppose what Trump did here, because if it becomes normalized, the next step could be even more overtly racist policy. Today is Refugees, Whites Only Edition. Tomorrow it could be something like a return to openly racist immigration quotas, or using the machinery of state to favor one group of citizens over another. We've seen it in history how the slow creep of institutional racism can lead to atrocity. It usually starts small, crouched in seemingly benign acts like, oh, we're just helping these nice farmer families, but it sets a precedent. The good news, people are fighting back. Activists, lawyers, community leaders, they're speaking out, filing lawsuits, organizing to demand that refugee policy return to one based on need, not creed or color. Ordinary citizens are waking up to this sham. We can already see the pushback in public opinions, courts potentially eyeing such discriminatory practices as unconstitutional, and they resolve to not let the Statue of Liberty's message be tarnished. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free air, as long as they're white. So let's treat Trump's Afrikaner refugee ploy as the wake-up call it is. It's a test of our values, a test on the system. Will America stand by its tradition, however imperfect, of offering refugee to the persecuted without discrimination, or will we side and slide further into this cynical game of refugees welcome, some exclusions apply? At the end of the day, this isn't just about South African farmers or immigration stats. It's about what kind of country we want to be. One that lives up to its ideals, or one that betrays them for the sake of white grievance politics. The only thing I know is that I can't wait for one of those white Southerners to tell one of those South Afrikaners to go back to Africa. Well, it looks like our time is up. I thank you for making the time to go through it to the end with me. Like, share, and subscribe, please, and thank you.